Hi and welcome. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the evolution of JavaScript on the desktop and also how that evolution tracks in parallel with the evolution of user experience on the desktop. Before I do that, though, I'm Charlie Samuels. I'm a developer at Giant Machines. Giant Machines is a full-stack development shop with a strong focus on product and design. I'm actually an engineer by trade, but I have a design background, and that's true for a lot of the folks who work with me. And it's this focus on product that has really served us well as consultants. It's important to us to always provide the best experiences we can, not only to our end users, but to the product and development teams that we work closely with to build great end user experiences. And it's that passion for user experiences that underpins our excitement about the future of web technologies, especially JavaScript. So I want to talk to you a little bit about how and why we think interoperability is the latest evolution in both web technologies and user experience. Historically speaking, updates to user experience have come as a consequence of frustrated users, frustrated developers, sometimes like myself, asking the question, why can't we? And in the 90s, the World Wide Web was created, and we had linked text documents, but why can't we make the web more dynamic? And this question gives us JavaScript. It gives us Ajax. It gives us single-page applications. And as web apps start to look more like desktop applications, we're asking, well, why can't we use web technologies on the desktop so I never have to use C or .NET ever again? And as we move in that direction, now web developers can more easily deliver sophisticated enterprise applications on the desktop. We see desktop web apps. And now the users using those are starting to expect the conventional features of desktop apps, asking, well, why can't we have multiple windows in an application? And Openfin built a middle layer API that really allows us to share context across multiple windows in different JavaScript instances. And this enables the full experience that we're accustomed to in our desktop applications, but with the web technologies that we really love. So finally, we've reached this full capability of that desktop application. And so the latest question that we have is, how can we share data across windows and across apps? And you've heard a lot about interoperability so far. How can we get this OS layer that allows us to communicate across applications? And Openfin's now making a strong effort to provide this OS layer with Openfin Cloud Services, which we found out about by partnering closely with them. And it has a wide array of features for enterprises. But what I'm going to focus on right now are the inter-application bus and the FTC3 protocol that I'm sure you've heard about in the course of these talks. And these are the tools that really support interoperability in the ecosystem. The inter-application bus is the channel, and FTC3 is the language by which apps can talk intelligibly to each other in this ecosystem. Now, each step on this timeline has fundamentally changed how we think about building for the web and introduced new tools for improving user experiences. And that's why interoperability across applications on the desktop represents for us the next frontier of user experience. At Giant Machines, staying on the cutting edge doesn't just mean that we take advantage of new tools and opportunities available to us, but it really means that we reconsider our approach to building in a way that's considerate of the new context. That's because it's always our goal to help our clients improve not only their products, but the way in which they think about developing their products in a rapidly changing tech world. And it's why we wanted to make sure to do a deep dive as soon as we possibly can in this new ecosystem, see how we could leverage its capabilities. So we set out to build a few applications that we could integrate in cloud services and see how they could share information and work with each other to empower our end users. And what better way than to build 3 applications than to take one large app that you've already built and split it up. And you all may have seen our Giant Machines portfolio application if you attended the last FinJS here in New York. For us, it really presented 3 discrete functionalities bundled into a single application. That's charting, quotes, and of course, the portfolio piece. So we decided to pull it apart and put it back together. So with that said, what did we learn about how to think about user experience in an ecosystem? In the rest of this presentation, I'll discuss what we learned was most important to successfully developing a product in an ecosystem. Because as consultants, we're charged with creating code bases for others, maintainability, accessibility, and the ability to build fast and pivot quickly are vitally important to us. So when it comes to building code with modularity in mind, this is a practice we've been leveraging for a long time. Now, Sean said you should build modularly because it's good. I'm going to explain to you why. We've found that modular architecture allows us to build our apps on a granular scale. We split apart components, adapters, and services so that they're not interdependent and they're ripe for reuse. We then take these components and we compose applications from them. And when we do that, the resulting applications are incredibly flexible. And this is how we were able to break our portfolio application down into its composed components and adapters and recompose them into 3 different apps with 3 different functions. And once we did this, we realized it had even larger implications in the context of an ecosystem. Now we can think about not just apps as services, but components as services, and maybe turning those components into their own applications. Breaking down our app into its smallest requisite functions actually increased their potential use cases in the hands of our end users. So could I break my code down and therefore my app into smaller services? For example, we could break out this search input field into its own component and still drive value by nature of its ability to send out messages into the ecosystem, even if by itself, as a closed application, it doesn't really do all that much. And what really enables this are shared values and shared language. We've talked a lot about interoperability, about building a community. This is incredibly important. Just like HTTP forever changed the way resources interact on the web, FDC3 centralizes the domain-specific language that we use for communication across apps, and it allows you to leverage communications from any app at large in the ecosystem. And you don't have to build out any costly integrations. So while your app may look like this without FDC3, with pieces of code for every single integration that you need, and that code is strewn throughout your app, instead, with the FDC3, all you need is a single data layer. And this allows you to consume and send out messages in the ecosystem with only a single integration. And you can do it modularly so that there are no interdependencies. We also encourage you to join the conversation. As a living specification, FDC3 allows us all to contribute to the conversation and build a spec that works for all of us. So it's really important to join in the community development. And so we were doing this, and it was really important for us to also see our app in a larger context and recognize that our app's not the center of our user's universe. The ecosystem itself will make a module of your app, whether you do or not. So we want to leverage this instead of fighting it. Your application may be extremely powerful, but even Gmail is only a small part of any end user's workflow. In the context of financial technologies, most of the time a lot of data-driven input goes into a single transactional output, like, say, the purchase of a bond. And if we think about each piece as a task in the larger workflow of, say, a user's life or a user's job, we can rethink the ways we collaborate interoperatively and unlock enormous potential for the end user and, of course, for ourselves. And obviously, as you build more modular apps for your end user, it increases the granularity of their customization control over their workflow and explodes the permutations of potential use cases that your app can power. Because the weight of integration is lifted, the end user is now free to integrate your app with anything in the entire ecosystem, not just with the apps for which you've actually specifically built an integration. In this short video, you'll see how we leverage FDC3 and the inter-application bus to communicate between separate applications. So we've got our quotes app and our charting app. You can use them independently of one another. We can type in Disney and see some information about Disney. But then in the scope of a larger ecosystem, we can also leverage the messages that we get through FDC3. So when we open up our portfolio application, you can actually see FTC3 messages going out into the ecosystem, being grabbed by our two separate applications that can either open windows when they receive a context for a stock like Apple that is not yet opened, or we can go back and do view chart, and we'll focus this piece that was previously unfocused in the tab. So this unlocks a whole lot of potential, and you're only seeing 3 giant machines applications up here. In the scope of a larger ecosystem where all of your applications are in play, the user can set up their own workflows and do whatever they like. So it's really only the tip of the iceberg. And this is really why we believe that interoperability represents the future of JavaScript on the desktop. So just to recap, value of modular code is magnified in an ecosystem. And it's not just modular code, it's modular thinking. If you can think about building your applications on a smaller scale, then you can provide more granular control over functionality to your end users. And make use of FTC3 and join the conversation. So thanks a lot. Thanks for listening. If you want to talk technically with us, I know there wasn't that much technical stuff. I figured no code after drinks. Check out our demo application. It's live in the back at our booth. Thanks a lot.